Hey everyone, welcome to our Real Interview Experience series. As you know, we share our subscribers' interviews experience here. So, one of our subscribers, Amit Kumar, recently cracked Java developer interview at EPAM. So, in this video, I'm gonna share everything about his experience, what he shared with me. Okay, and guys, if you have recently attended any interview, then please fill the form in the description. We will reach out to you. You can choose to share your name, photo, and LinkedIn profile, or share your experience anonymously. We are also giving gift cards to the participants, so don't miss out and don't forget to subscribe to catch more videos like this. So now let's get started. So basically, he applied through Naukri.com for a role open for 3 to 7 years of experience. After applying, he received a phone call from HR, which basically his telephonic round. During this round, HR asked about his skill set, notice period, and location preferences. After that, he received a mail regarding interview schedule. He had two technical rounds, so I am summing up all technical questions from these two rounds and going to share with you one by one with detailed explanation. Let's start with the core Java. So first interviewer asked difference between abstraction and encapsulation. So abstraction hides implementation details and shows only essential features like a TV remote hiding internal circuits, whereas encapsulation binds data and methods together, restricting direct access like a medicine capsule protecting its content. Then he asked, can we achieve encapsulation without abstraction? If yes, how? So yes, we can achieve encapsulation without abstraction by keeping data inside a class using private variables and methods. Even if we don't hide complex details, stays safe. It's like locking valuables in a box without hiding the box itself. Then he asked about string constant pool and where objects and literals are stored. So the string constant pool is a special memory in Java where setting literals are stored to save space. String literals go inside this pool in heap memory, while objects created with the new string are stored separately in the heap. Okay. Then moving ahead, interviewer asked, can interface have private methods? So yes, an interface can have private methods in Java, especially from Java 9. These methods help reuse code inside default and static methods but cannot be accessed outside the interface. It's like the helper functions working only inside the interface. Then they ask the purpose of private methods inside an interface if they cannot be accessed outside the interface. So private methods in an interface help reuse code inside default and static method. They reduce code duplication and keep logic organized. Even though they cannot be accessed outside, they support other methods inside the interface and making coding easier. Then interviewer asked, if you don't use a terminal operation in a stream pipeline, will the intermediate operations be executed? So this is a Java 8 question. So no intermediate operations won't run without a terminal operations because stream uses lazy evaluation. They only execute it when a final result is needed. It's like a TV remote. Pressing buttons does nothing until you turn on the TV. Okay. Then he asked to explain internal working of hashmap in detail. So a hashmap stores key values pairs using a hashing technique. It uses an array of buckets and node, we call it linked list or tree, to handle collisions. When adding data, it calculates a hash code for the key and places it in the correct bucket. Then they ask, if two keys have the same hash code, how does hashmap store them internally? So hashmap stores them in the same bucket using a linked list. It checks keys with equals. If they are different, a new node is added. If many collisions happens, it uses a tree. We call it red black tree. Then he asks, how many types of class loaders are there? So Java has basically three main types of class loaders. Bootstrap class loaders that loads core Java classes like java.lang from the rt.jar. Extension class loader loads classes from the ext folder. Application class loader loads user-defined classes from the project's class path. Then he asks what happens if two different class loaders load the same class. So they create two separate copies in memory even if the class name is the same. Java treats them as a different classes, which can cause class cast exception when trying to typecast between them. Then he asked to explain the solid principles. So solid principles improve code quality. Single responsibilities keeps classes focused. Open close allows extension without modification. List of substitutions ensures subclass compatibility, and interface segregation avoids unnecessary methods, and the last one is dependency inversion, which promotes abstraction. These ensures flexibility, scalability, and maintainability. Before moving ahead, guys, I will like to share one important thing with you. Actually, we had launched complete interview preparation material, structured step by step by myself, expert, and MNC's interviewers. And the best part is that now no one need to go anywhere else to prepare interviews. There is a 99% chance that interviewers will ask questions from this material. So basically, it contains a lot of material categorized by experience level, means each experience level has different material with all possible interview question and answer for Java, Spring Framework, Maven, Git, Spring Boot, Spring Security, Spring Data, JPA, Kafka, microservices, Java coding question, Stream API coding question, and many more. I have provided the link to get this in below description, and if someone need this material plus 2 real enterprise client projects for reference plus one-on-one lifetime doubt sessions and referrals to the big MNCs, then they should check the interview preparation kit. I will provide the link for this as well in the description below. So now moving to our interview. Then they asked, can violating the open close principle still be beneficial in certain situation? So we call OCP as open close principle. So yes, violating OCP can help in quick fixes or smaller projects where extending code is unnecessary. Modifying a class directly may be simpler and faster than adding new classes. However, for large projects, following OCP makes code scalable and maintainable. Then interviewer asked to explain exception hierarchy. So Java's exception hierarchy starts with throwable, which has two main types: exception that contains checked and unchecked, and error. It's issues like out of memory error. So checked exceptions must be handled, while unchecked exception occur due to coding mistake. For example, runtime exception. Then he asked, why does Java separate checked and unchecked exception, and can we create our own custom checked exception? So Java separate checked exceptions to ensure important errors are handled, while unchecked exceptions come from coding mistakes. Checked exception must be caught or declared. Yes, we can create a custom checked exception by extending the exception class. Then he asked about the collection framework hierarchy. So Java's collection framework hierarchy starts with the collection interface, which has list, set, and queue as a main types. List contains array list, linked list, and it allows duplicates. Set, hash set, reset, stores quiz items, and queue, like priority queue, follows ordering rules. Then they asked, why doesn't the collection interface extended the map interface? So because they serve different purposes, collection stores individual elements while map stores key value pairs. Since their structures are different, keeping them separate makes the framework more flexible and easier to use. Then he asked the difference between hash map and tree map with order of time complexity of retrieval and search. So hash map stores data without order and has O1 time complexity for retrieval and search using hashing, whereas tree map keeps data sorted and has O log n time complexity because it uses a red black tree for storing key value pairs. Then interviewer asked, can we store null as a key in a tree map? So no, tree map cannot store null as a key because it uses red black tree for sorting, and null cannot be compared to other keys. However, hashmap allows one null key since it doesn't need sorting. Then he asked the difference between microservice and monolithic architecture. So monolithic architecture is a single large application where all features are tightly connected microservices, whereas microservices architecture splits application into small independent services that communicate via APIs. Microservices are scalable and flexible, while monolithic systems are simpler but harder to modify. Then he asks, is there any scenario where a monolithic architecture is preferable over microservices? So yes, monolithic architecture is better for small applications, fast development, and low maintenance projects. It's simpler, easier to deploy, and avoids the complexity of managing multiple services. Startups or internal tools often use monolithic architecture for quick development. Then he asked, can a Spring Boot application run without the Spring Boot application annotation? So yes, a Spring Boot application can run without a Spring Boot application annotation by using configuration annotation, enable auto configuration, and component scan separately. These three annotations. So these three annotations together provide the same functionality, but Spring Boot application makes the setup simpler and cleaner. Then he asks what is dispatcher servlet. So dispatcher servlet is the front controller in Spring MVC that handles all requests. It forwards requests to the correct controller, processes responses, and returns a result. It acts like a traffic controller, managing the flow between users and the application. Then they ask about the difference between request param and path param. So request param is used for optional query parameters in URLs. For example, question mark id is equal to 10, while path param is a part of the user. We just pass slashes. Request params are flexible, while path params are used for specific resource identification. Then he asked, can we use request param and path param together in a single method? So yes, we can use request param and path variable together in a method. Path variable gets values from the URL, right? Whereas request param gets query parameter like id is equal to 10. They serve different purposes and can be combined when needed. Then he asked, explain a Spring MVC architecture. So Spring MVC architecture follows the model view controller, that is MVC pattern. The dispatcher servlet handles requests, forward them to controller, which process data with the service layer. The view, like JSP, displays the result and the model holds the data. Then they asked to explain REST principles. So REST principles ensure efficient web services. Statelessness keeps each request independent, while client server separation allows flexibility. A uniform interface ensures consistency, and cacheability improves performance. A layered system adds security and scalability, while code on demand enhances functionality. Then he asked, is REST always stateless? Can a REST API maintain a session? So REST is designed to be stateless, meaning the server doesn't store client session data. However, REST API can maintain a session using tokens, cookies, or databases storages, but this goes against REST principles and may affect scalability. Then he asked what happens if a circuit breaker remains open for too long. So if a circuit breaker stays open too long, requests keep failing, causing service delays or downtime. It prevents recovery even if the system is fixed. A proper timeout and retry mechanism helps move it to a half open or closed state. Then they ask, how will you configure your application if your application different databases for different environments? So use Spring profiles to configure different databases for different environments. Define separate application dot properties or YAML files like application hyphen dev dot properties, application hyphen prod dot properties, and activate the profile using spring dot profiles dot active. This ensures app connects to the right database automatically. Then he asks, how do we handle exceptions in our application? So we can handle exceptions using try catch blocks, throw keywords, and custom exceptions. In Spring Boot, we use controller advice and exceptional handler to manage errors globally, ensuring clear responses and a smooth user experience without application crashes. Then they ask, can a finally block override an exception thrown in a try block? So yes, a finally block can override an exception from the try block if it has a return statement or throws a new exception. However, this is not recommended as it can hide important errors and make debugging difficult. Then he asks how transactions are handled in your application. So transactions are handled by using transactional annotation in Spring Boot. It ensures that all the databases operations in a method either complete fully or roll back on failure, maintaining data integrity. Then he asks what is TDD, BDD, testing parameter. So TDD, that means test driven development, writes test before code, whereas BDD, behavior driven development, focuses on user behavior using simple language. The testing parameter suggests more unit tests, fewer integration tests, and the least UI tests for efficient software testing. Then he asks what is ACID property. So ACID stands for atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability. It ensures database transactions and complete and reliable. Atomicity means all or nothing. Consistency keeps valid data, whereas isolation prevents conflicts, and durability save changes permanently even after failure. Then they ask how can you optimize your query which is taking a long time. So to optimize a slow query, use indexes for faster searches. Avoid select star to fetch only needed columns. Use joins efficiently. Filter data with where, limit results, and analyze execution plans to find bottlenecks and improve performance. Then he asks monitoring tools I have used in my project. CI/CD pipelines I have used in my project. So you have to answer this as per your project. Okay. Then he asked what is SDLC. So SDLC stands for Software Development Life Cycle, and it is the process of building software in steps like requirement gathering, design, development, testing, deployment, and maintenance. It ensures software is developed efficiently, meets users' needs, and is high quality and error free. Then they ask why is agile preferred over the waterfall model. So agile is preferred over waterfall model because it allows faster development, flexibility, and continuous feedback, unlike waterfall where changes are hard after planning. Agile delivers works in small parts, we call it sprints, making it easier to adapt and improve quality. Then he asked about the agile practices being followed in my project, so you have to answer this as per your project. Then he asked a rainwater trapping coding question, so I will provide a link to get this in the description. So guys, this is all about EPAM technical interview experience, and don't forget to check interview preparation kit below in the description. Thank you.